So this video begins on what is in my copy, page 46 of A Doll's House, immediately after Krogstad has left, following his threatening conversation with Nora. And as we were saying previously, structure, this play is hanging on a knife edge. We're at the end of the complication and we do not know how this is going to be resolved. Is Nora going to find a way out? Is there going to be no way out? Is that way out going to be her suicide? Is it going to be her leaving home? We just don't know. So, we begin then, immediately after his exit, where Nora goes to the hall door, opens it slightly, and listens. Says, "He is going. He is not putting the letter in the box. Oh, no, no, that's impossible." She opens the door by degrees. What is that? He is standing outside. He is not going downstairs. Is he hesitating? Can he? A letter drops in the box. Now again, we were talking in the previous video about how it's important that we see Krogstad not simply as a two-dimensional antagonist. The fact that he hesitates before doing that clearly shows that he has got some reservations about what he's doing. But as he himself said, he in a sense has been forced into this by the actions of Nora and Torvald in their different ways. And he feels like it's his only way out. So, having dropped the letter into the box, telling Torvald about Nora's crime, and threatening him with the public humiliation, Krogstad's footsteps are heard till they die away as he goes downstairs. Nora utters a stifled cry and runs across the room to the table by the sofa. There is a short pause. Now, many times in this play, we've talked about the significance of Nora's movements, but the fact here that she runs, physically runs, I think is a good measure of her extreme distress at this point. She speaks and says, "In the letterbox," and she creeps across to the hall door. It's lying there. Torvald, there is no hope for us now." Mrs. Lind comes in from the room on the left, carrying the dress. Now you'll recall again earlier on in this scene how Nora and Mrs. Lind were embroiled in this quite tense conversation about the nature of her relationship with Dr. Rank. Mrs. Lind was trying to work out what the nature of that was. Was it Dr. Rank that she'd borrowed money from? Was there something improper going on? And of course that was never resolved. That's been hanging in the air. But Mrs. Lind now comes back and speaks, saying, "There, I can't see anything more to mend now. Would you like to try it on?" Nora, reduced from the stifled cry, which was the previous stage direction, to a hoarse whisper, says, "Christine, come here." Mrs. Lind throws the dress down on the sofa and says, "What is the matter with you? You look so agitated." "Come here. Do you see that letter? There, look, you can see it through the glass in the letterbox." "Yes, I see it. That letter is from Krogstad." "Nora, it was Krogstad who lent you the money." See, now finally Mrs. Lind is starting to understand. Nora replies, "Yes, and now Torvald will know all about it." "Believe me, Nora, that's the best thing for both of you. You don't know all. I forged a name." And so we realise, of course, that the partial admission of guilt that Nora made to Mrs. Lind in Act 1, that she had taken out a loan without her husband's knowledge, she didn't know the full story that she had committed the forgery. Mrs. Lind is shocked now into the exclamation, "Good heavens! I only want to say this to you, Christine. You must be my witness." "Your witness? What do you mean? What am I to—" "If I should go out of my mind, and it might easily happen—" "Nora!" Notice in the previous sections here, there is no stichomythia in this, because it's a text that's written entirely in prose. But clearly I think these sort of incomplete sentences demonstrate the increased pace, demonstrate the extreme sort of tension, the extreme weight, if you like, that is being placed upon this conversation. The taking place. Nora, exclaimed Mrs. Lind. Or if anything else should happen to me, anything, for instance, that might prevent my being here. Now, clearly, she is thinking again either of running away, of flight, or of her suicide. Mrs. Lind replies, Nora, you're quite out of your mind. Nora goes on and says, and if it should happen, there was someone who wanted to take all the responsibility, all the blame, you understand? Yes, but how can you suppose? Nora continues, then you must be my witness that it is not true, Christine. Now, I think what the implication here is that Nora thinks that Torvald might take all the blame upon himself to save his wife's reputation. Now, given what we know of Torvald, I think that Nora is probably being a bit optimistic, but she is trying to protect Torvald by making sure that Mrs. Lind ensures that she, Nora, gets the blame, even in her absence. That's what she's trying to do here. So I think if we're continuing to see Nora in a relatively positive light, then that is evidence that you could use. Notice with reference to things like witness, for example, the repeated use of witness, and we see again that there is something a little bit more serious to Nora than we first thought. I think in the sense that one of the keys to Nora's character is that early quote repeated twice, that Nora is not so silly as you may think. She is forced to play that role, if you like, to some extent by the expectations of society and of her husband in particular, but she does have other depths. And I suppose, in a sense, if she's naive and uneducated, I suppose, in a sense, that itself is a fault of society that has forced women to live in that way and be brought up in that way. Anyway, we continue on. She goes on to say, I am not out of my mind at all. I am in my right senses now, and I tell you no one else has known anything about it, and I alone did the whole thing. Remember that. Mrs. Lind says, I will, indeed, but I don't understand all this. Nora, how should you understand it? A wonderful thing is going to happen. A wonderful thing? Yes, a wonderful thing, but it is so terrible, Christine. It mustn't happen. Not for all the world. Now, it's strange. You can sense her confusion here. This strange sort of sublime combination of emotions, wonder, terror. It was no wonder that Mrs. Lind has fears for her sanity. But we see how this goes on. Mrs. Lind tries her best to help and says, I will go at once and see Krogstad. Nora replies, don't go to him. He will do you some harm. Mrs. Lind replies, there was a time when he would gladly do anything for my sake. He? Now, again, if we're talking about the backstories of these characters, then this is interesting, the idea that Mrs. Lind might have once been involved with Krogstad. I think we've had hints of that previously. However, if not, we certainly do later on. But nonetheless, we continue on. Mrs. Lind asks, where does he live? How should I know? Yes, and she feels in her pocket for the card which he'd left previously and says, here is his card. But the letter! And we sense her sort of frenzy. Now, at this point, they're about to be interrupted at this dramatic moment. I think in the way in which Ibsen's stage manages these interruptions, it increases the pace, it increases the sort of tension that we're seeing here. But now, Helmer calls from his room, knocking on the door. Nora cries out anxiously, oh, what's that? What do you want? Don't be so frightened. We're not coming in. You have locked the door. Are you trying on your dress? So this is the innocent interpretation that he places on it. And Nora replies, yes, that's it. I look so nice, Torvald. Mrs. Lind reads Krogstad's visiting card and says, I see he lives at the corner here. Yes, but it's no use. It is hopeless. The letter is lying there in the box. Mrs. Lind replies, and your husband keeps the key? Yes, always. Krogstad must ask him for his letter back unread. He must find some excuse. But it is just at this time that Torvald generally... You must delay him. Go into him in the meantime. I'll come back as soon as I can. She goes out hurriedly through the hall door. Notice how still they're sort of looking for a resolution. They're still trying to seek a way out. And even when it seemed that Nora had made up her mind, Mrs. Lind is almost persuading her not to give up hope. So, we continue on then. Nora goes to Helma's door, opens it, and peeps in. Torvald? He calls out from the inner room. Well, now I venture at last to come into my own room again. Come along, Rank, now you will see. Halting in the doorway. But what is this? What is what, dear? Says Nora innocently. Rank led me to expect a splendid transformation. And Rank from the doorway replies, I understood so, but evidently I was mistaken. Yes, nobody is to have the chance of admiring me in my dress until tomorrow. But, my dear Nora, you look so worn out. Have you been practicing too much? No, I have not practiced at all. But you will need to. Yes, indeed I shall, Torvald. But I can't get on a bit without you to help me. I've absolutely forgotten the whole thing. And this, now, is Nora acting in response to the plan of Mrs. Lind, that she should distract Torvald for long enough for Mrs. Lind to be able to do something. And that's what she's doing now, by asking and insisting on Torvald to help her with it. Helma replies, oh, we will soon work it up again. Yes, help me, Torvald. Promise me that you will. I'm so nervous about it. All the people. You must give yourself up to me entirely this evening. Not the tiniest bit of business. You mustn't even take a pen in your hand. Will you promise, Torvald dear? And see how she's desperate that he will not check the letter box, because, of course, doing so he would find Krogstad's letter. Helma replies rather indulgently, I promise. This evening I will be wholly and absolutely at your service, you helpless little mortal. Ah, by the way, first of all I will just... And he goes towards the hall door. What are you going to do there? Only to see if any letters have come. No, no, don't do that, Torvald. Why not? Torvald, please don't. There is nothing there. Well, let me look. And he turns to go to the letterbox. Now again, it's a real dramatic moment, because it seems to suggest that everything is going to be destroyed for Nora. He will take the letter, he will read the letter, and everything will be in ruins. There's only one thing that she can do, and so Nora at the piano plays the first bars of the music for the Tarantella dance. Helma stops in the doorway. Aha! And it's interesting again that she uses this objectification of herself. She uses this as a tool for her convenience. Now, I think I've talked before about the significance of the Tarantella, but it's worth reminding ourselves because it is quite interesting. So this dance of southern Italy, the tradition is that it was done by people, usually by women, but by people who had been bitten by a poisonous spider. And the tradition is that you danced until you dropped as a way of exorcising the poison, exorcising the evil spirits. So it's very much associated with this kind of wild, abandoned passion, this real sort of frantic dancing style. Anyhow, she gets his attention. He pauses from where he was going, and she says to him, I can't dance tomorrow if I don't practice with you. Helma goes up to her and says, are you really so afraid of it, dear? Yes, so dreadfully afraid of it, says Nora, again playing up to this to try and keep his attention, and says, let me practice at once. There is time now before we go to dinner. Sit down and play for me, Torvald dear. Criticise me and correct me as you play. Again, it's interesting how at times of need she infantilizes, she belittles herself before him. But it plays into everything that is sort of patronizing and patrician about Torvald, because he finally falls in and he says, with great pleasure, if you wish me to, and he sits down at the piano. Nora takes out of the box a tambourine and a long, variegated shawl, scallop-edged shawl. She hastily drapes the shawl around her as a prop. Then she springs to the front of the stage and calls out, "Now play for me. I'm going to dance." Helma plays, and Nora dances. Rank stands by the piano behind Helma and looks on. And of course, it's interesting because it's one thing that we're seeing Nora objectify herself before her husband, but the fact that this is also happening in front of Rank too. Now, in a sense, Rank is collateral damage here. It's just unfortunate that he happens to be here. But bearing in mind that only a few minutes ago he had this very awkward conversation in which he declared his unspoken love, or previously unspoken, unrequited love for Nora, he must be feeling genuinely awkward now, watching her dance and throw herself about in this fashion, and wondering whether in fact she's not the most enormous tease. Helma then plays and calls out, "Slower, slower," and Nora says, "I can't do it any other way. Not so violently, Nora. This is the way." He stops playing and says, "No, no, that is not a bit right." Now, one other interesting thing. We're talking about this dance, this traditional dance, which was previously wild and unrestrained. It's interesting that Torvald wants it tamed in much the same way that we can argue that he wants Nora, his little skylark, his little squirrel, tamed. He wants her, yes, I suppose, to be objectified, yes, to be sensual, but within certain socially acceptable limits. And so, in a sense, we get a reminder then from this action of Nora, the free spirit, being constrained in by the limitations of society. So, Nora then laughing and swinging this tambourine, saying, "Didn't I tell you so?" And I suppose there is a kind of an echo in this of the games that we saw Nora playing with the children at the beginning of Act 2. It's in these moments, these childlike moments, that just for a second she is able to escape from the slavery, if you like, of her life. And I suppose therefore, when we bear in mind that this is associated with this dream trip to Italy that she made, it's a reminder about how she cherishes these escapist episodes from the constraints of middle-class, urban 19th century life. So, Rank then interjects and says, "Let me play for her." Helma gets up and says, "Yes, do. I can correct her better then." Rank sits down at the piano and plays. Nora dances more and more wildly. Helma has taken up a position beside the stove and during her dance gives her frequent instructions. She does not seem to hear him. Her hair comes down and falls over her shoulders. She pays no attention to it but goes on dancing. Interesting then, isn't it, that Dr. Rank, who perhaps does have this unrequited love for her, is quite content to play rapidly and to indulge her in this, without knowing, of course, that the more she can distract Torvald, obviously, the more it plays into Nora's intentions. And thankfully, this whole rather awkward episode is over with the entrance of Mrs. Lind. Mrs. Lind stands as if spellbound in the doorway, watching the sight, and says, "Oh," as if she is amazed that a woman would do this, would behave like this. And Nora cries out as she dances, "Such fun, Christine." Again, it's up to us whether she is playing it, or whether in fact in this moment she does find a moment's escape. As we said, in that sense, it's parallel to the games at the beginning of Act 2, I think. So, Helma continues with some excellent dramatic irony and says, "Helma, beg your pardon, his name is Helma." He says, "My dear darling Nora, you are dancing as if your life depended on it." Now there is some dramatic irony, and in fact she replies, "So it does." "Stop, Rank, this is sheer madness. Stop, I tell you." Interesting that Rank was more reluctant than he was. Rank stops playing, and Nora suddenly stands still. Helma goes up to her. "I could never have believed it. You have forgotten everything I taught you." Again, the belittling sort of language, but again, it's the way that he wants to control these sort of natural instincts and tendencies, as symbolised by the dance. And Nora, rather petulantly, childlike, perhaps playing into that stereotype, throws away the tambourine and says, "There, you see? You will want a lot of coaching. Yes, you see how much I need it. You must coach me up to the last minute. Promise me that, Torvald." Still trying to keep his attention away from the letters, of course. And he says, "You can depend on me. You must not think of anything but me, either today or tomorrow. You mustn't open a single letter, not even open the letterbox." Um, and of course Helmer then says, "Are you still afraid of that fellow?" Nora says, "Yes, indeed I am." "Nora, I can tell from your looks that there is a letter from him lying there." Nora says, "I don't know. I think there is, but you mustn't read anything of that kind now. Nothing horrid must come between us till this is all over." Again, dramatic irony, of course, because we, having been privy to the conversations that Nora has had, have got more idea than Torvald does about precisely how it might be all over, i.e. her running away or committing suicide. Rank whispers to Helmer, clearly concerned, I think, by the behaviour of Nora, and says you mustn't contradict her, as if in some sense she's fragile or mentally ill. Helmer takes her in his arms and says the child shall have her way, but tomorrow night, after you have danced, note again, use of the term child, Nora then says, then you will be free, and the maid appears in the doorway to the right. "Dinner is served, ma'am." "We will have champagne, Helen." "Very good, ma'am." Now, again, I think champagne obviously clearly has the same associations with luxury and indulgence then that it does now. And perhaps there is a sense in which Nora is trying to make this night memorable. Perhaps for herself, perhaps also for Torvald, if it's the last time that he might be with her. So we find that there. Anyhow, let's see. Helmer, rather surprised, cries out, "Hello, are we going to have a banquet?" "Yes, a champagne banquet till the small hours." And she calls out, "And a few macaroons, Helen, lots just for once." So, in a sense, we realise then, don't we, the sort of superficialness of those early deceptions. You know, she doesn't care about something as small as a few macaroons now, because clearly she's had much greater things to worry about. Anyhow, Helmer continues on and says, Come, don't be so wild and nervous. Be my own little skylark, as you used." "Yes, dear, I will. But go in now, and you too, Dr. Rank. Christine, you must help me to do up my hair." Rank whispers to Helmer as they go out, "I suppose there is nothing? She is not expecting anything?" Uncertain in that term whether perhaps she's suggesting that is she pregnant, and is it some kind of, I don't know, hormone rush that's causing her to behave in this strange manner? But Helmer can only reply, "Far from it, my dear fellow. It is simply nothing more than this childish nervousness I was telling you of." And they go into the right-hand room. So we get a sense then, don't we? We know this whole play focuses, around Nora. Everything really focuses around her. But it's interesting because in this little snippet here, we get a little indication of the kind of private concerns that might have been going on off stage that we're not privy to. And clearly, for all the fact that he plays up to Nora in public, clearly Helmer has some concerns about her behaviour, about her mental health, the childish nervousness that he describes. Anyway, they exit into the right-hand room. Nora remains with Mrs. Lynn and says, "Well?" Mrs. Lynn says, "Gone out of town." Nora, "I could tell from your face. He is coming home tomorrow evening. I wrote a note for him." Nora replies, "You should have let it alone. You must prevent nothing. After all, it is splendid to be waiting for a wonderful thing to happen." "What is it you are waiting for?" "Oh, you wouldn't understand. Go into them. I will come in a moment." Mrs. Lynn goes into the dining room. And Nora stands still for a little while, as if to compose herself. Then she looks at her watch. 5 o'clock. 7 hours till midnight, and then 24 hours till the next midnight. Then the tarantella will be over. 24 and 7, 31 hours to live. Helmer, rather incongruously, calls out from the doorway to the right, "Where's my little skylark?" And Nora, in one last sort of playful gesture in this scene, goes to him with her arms outstretched and cries, "Here she is." There then, 31 hours to live. It becomes clear that at this point, Nora now believes that her suicide is going to be the only way out that is available to her from this dilemma that she is in. So we said a little while ago that the hope of a resolution was lying on a knife edge. We've said that in a sense at this juncture it looks very much like this play is going to end almost tragically with her death. How much that continues we will see, but I think what we do see from Ibsen is that actually he rejects either of those cut and dried endings. We don't have the happy resolution of a well-made play, you know, the prevalent drama form of the mid-19th century. But equally, we're not going to get something as clean and as cleansing as the death that you might expect at the end of a tragedy. This is going to be a play with a messy ending. It's going to leave us with lots of questions to think about in terms of society. On that note, then, that is the ending of Act 2. We'll leave this video here, and we'll pick up Act 3 later.